another one done. So this month we've read The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Oh my goodness. It is such a good book. It is such a rewarding book. I know I've read comments online of people saying like, oh, it takes so long to get the ball rolling. But the thing is, all that stuff in the beginning is the book. It's part of the experience of reading Dostoevsky and a book like this. It is so rewarding. So The Brothers Karamazov, yes, it is a story. There is a narrative, but it's not just a story. It is a book about what it means to be a human being. It is a book about what and who God is. It is a book about beliefs and how our beliefs greatly impact what it is that we do in everything, in every aspect of our lives. And that is one thing I think that I've heard people say before reading the book that, just to warn you, remember that know that Dostoevsky was a very, very devout Russian Orthodox Christian. And so he's putting those beliefs in the book. And the thing is, I think that's such a modern way of looking at things. We tend to separate the artist from their artwork, and that we can't, they don't have to, and that there doesn't have to be a real relationship between the artists and their artwork, the beliefs and their artwork. But that's just simply not true. And so I find it funny when people say like, oh, remember though that he believed this and da-da-da. Of course, whatever we believe is going to manifest itself in whatever that we make. And that is part of the book. Our beliefs dictate our actions, and the circumstances that we are presented, what we do, is greatly influenced by what we believe. Hello, and welcome to August. I'm sorry I'm a couple days late. I need an extra day to finish this monster of a book. If you're interested in joining the book club, next month we are reading Loss and Gain by Saint John Henry Newman. We meet up once a month at the end of the month and talk about it online through video, of course. There's also a Telegram group where we share little tidbits, our favorite passages, our thoughts about the book, and where we motivate each other. So if you want to join, the link is in the description below. Let's get back to the book review, shall we? Don't mind my children, they're screaming, they're just playing. So this is not like a murder mystery book in the sense it's like a quick whodunit type of book that you might get from other kinds of murder mysteries, but this is more than that. It really is a book about philosophy, theology, morality. And Dostoyevsky wanted to change the world, human beings, to be better, to become better. Dostoyevsky saw the world through numbers, biblical numbers, much like medieval people look at the world. So, for example, I learned that there are 4 parts to the book, and that's because there are the 4 Gospels. It is a very organized book, and each part has its purpose. And I think that's because Dostoyevsky believed that God, when God does things, there is an order to what he does. And so, like I said, he was almost obsessed and looked at the world through that. There is the father, Fyodor Karamazov, that Fyodor Dostoyevsky named after himself, which is telling because Fyodor Karamazov is the worst person in this book. He really is an awful human being, an awful man. Dostoyevsky's saying, well, he is just as awful as he is. I also learned that Alyosha was the name of the son that he had that died. The first half of the book, actually half of the book, is an introduction to all the characters, to many of the characters, and the current situation. He takes a lot of time introducing the different people, and that is because he wants you to know them as an actual human being, a whole human being, and not just he's the bad guy, he's the good guy, but there's no explanation as to why. And getting to know all of them this way is such a rewarding thing at the end, and you understand why he took so much time to do it. Dmitri is the eldest brother. He is the one who was betrothed to Katerina Ivanovna. I can't remember. I can never remember the last names. But he's now trying to get with Grushenka. He's changed his mind, and his dad, Fyodor Karamazov, wants to get with Grushenka too. Ivan is the second son. He is a very outspoken atheist, and he's a writer, and he has a lot of struggle with his atheism. He doesn't completely... It's not that he doesn't believe that God doesn't exist. It's the conditions that God has given to us that he cannot accept. And Ivan spoke to me greatly, just because one of my best friends is like Ivan, a person who struggles with God, cannot believe in God just because, not because there isn't proof, but more because they don't want to accept the conditions that God has given to us. Then there's Alyosha, who is the Christ-like character, the Christ-like brother who is wants to be a monk. He's living in a monastery, but he gets sent back out into the world by Elder Zosima, who's dying. And then there's Smerdyakov, who is their half-brother, who's the bastard brother, who's not really accepted as being one of them. And their dad, Fyodor Karamazov, has really done each and every one of these brothers something awful several times in their lives. And so each of them has a reason to despise their dad so much, although Alyosha still keeps loving his dad and he always looks to the good in the bad in his father, despite all the bad. Fyodor Karamazov had taken all their money and gambled it away. He tried to take their mistress. He tried to do all these bad things to his own children. He was just an awful, selfish man. Complex, a man hard to love, but even despite the anger of all the brothers, all of them loved him to some degree, perhaps not Smerdyakov. So it goes through all the bad things that happen. At some point, people might complain that it's a lot of detail, but I think the detail is part of the experience of the book, because there are many times I found in the book, for example, a character would be talking, and then there would be a description of how they said it or an expression that they had while saying it, and because of that, you can really hear and you can really see that person and what their subtext is. And so I find it quite helpful. It is something you kind of have to get into the groove of. You don't like it. I mean, it's not light reading, but I find that in the end, that is part of the experience of reading this book, is that all the details, how they're dressed, how they move, how they speak, the little reactions that they have is definitely part of the book. And because I think Dostoyevsky wants you to really see them, first of all, but like I said, also understand the subtext. So the second half of the book is when the ball in the narrative gets going. Because in the first half, I thought, there were moments during the book I was thinking like, oh, how long has it been? Has it been months? No, it's only been like 2 or 3 days. But I think that's part of the experience. You feel like you've been awake with the characters all those 3 days, like when they've been losing sleep. So the murder happens, and he takes you through this journey of, you think you know who has done it. I won't reveal who, but you think you know who's done it. And he does this thing where he goes forward and back in time. And so it's kind of hard it's not a trap, not to fall into a trap, but not to follow the way he wants you to follow. I'm not saying that he is giving you everything. Dostoevsky definitely wants you, the reader, to work for it, to really think, and that's part of the discussions. He wants the reader to think, and like I said, he wanted people to become better human beings. So you think that this person did it, but then he'll surprise you with something. And my favorite part was in part 4, near the last, when the trial was happening, was when the defendant's lawyer made his speech, and it was this beautiful, beautiful speech that made me think a lot, and it made me question myself, re-examine myself. And I've described this to the book club where we were reading it together. I said it's just like an extended examination of conscience, but through different human beings, through different people. In the very first half, there are a lot of discussions about God, about morality, about what it is to be religious. Ivan, the atheist brother, has this great chapter where he wrote a poem and called The Great Inquisitor. And then he also has this chapter later in the book where he gets to talk to the devil. And this is one of the greatest bits in the book. This was the first time I was actually able to listen to parts of it in audio form to catch up. I listened to The Great Inquisitor in audio form, and because of the nature of the subject matter, it's talking about theology, morality, it was almost like a podcast. So I was able to listen to it as if he was having this discussion with his brother on a podcast. But those were some of the greatest moments with Ivan in terms of discussion. The same with the elder Zosima. I underlined a lot of his quotes. It must be difficult for people who don't really have any notion of Christianity, at least this type of Christianity, because Christianity has been watered down so much in our time. But Orthodox Christianity, it must seem very severe for those who are not believers. But I think the great thing about the book, why it's able to speak to different people from different beliefs, is because of its narrative form, and because all the character is a character. There is a person from every walk of life in this book. There's also a parallel, I think, the parricide that occurs. Fyodor Karamazov is murdered, so someone committed parricide. But then also, what does it mean to kill God? What does it mean not to have God in your life? Killing God, taking God away. And we see that parallel, that struggle with Ivan, and deals with suffering. And that was the one thing that Ivan really struggled with, was the suffering, and they deal with that a bit in the Grand Inquisitor. Each character has their moment of weakness. Even Alyosha, when he leaves, he has this moment where he is about to do something bad and he wants to do it, but by the grace of God, something saves him from it. And that's the thing too, providence, that the role of providence in our lives is in there. Dostoyevsky has this great understanding of those people who, I know people in my life who just don't want to forgive themselves and give everything to God. They just can't come to the fact of forgiving themselves. And so they take God's conditions and say no, because they would rather live with this burden. The great thing about this book is it's a philosophy, it's a theology, morality book. And he gets you to ask those questions, the real questions, the important questions of life. What it means to be a human being, who God is, what happens when we take God away. And it's so relevant to today. There's so much in it that is still relevant to this day, and it hasn't changed. And I think because it is in a narrative form, it broadens its audience, like people. I mean, not everybody would be willing to read Aristotle or even St. Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine, but I think this is an easier introduction, or it's not even an introduction, it's a deep dive into philosophy, theology, morality, without feeling like it's just a discussion. You know what I mean? There are many other things I could say, but it is a book worth reading. It is worth all the time it takes to get to the end. I really encourage you to read this book. Please take the time if you haven't read it. Let me know in the comments below if you have read it. How many times did you like it? Were you able to get to the end? Has it been your 10th attempt at reading it? Let me know in the comments below, and I shall see you in the next one.